For 3 years, the ghost of 2008 haunted Novak Djokovic. His breakthrough Grand Slam title in Melbourne was supposed to be the dawn of a new era, the moment a brash, impossibly talented challenger kicked down the door and joined the royal court of Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal. But the new era never quite arrived. Instead, Djokovic found himself in a frustrating state of limbo, a king in exile. He was cemented as the world number 3, a perennial contender who reached the latter stages of tournaments with impressive regularity. But the final, career-defining step remained achingly out of reach. The Federer-Nadal duopoly, which he had so spectacularly interrupted, had reconsolidated its power. They traded Grand Slam titles between them, continuing their epic rivalry, while Djokovic watched from the sidelines, seemingly unable to replicate his moment of glory. He became known, cruelly, as a one-slam wonder. The questions began to mount, not about his talent, which was undeniable, but about his body and his mind. His on-court struggles with his breathing became a recurring, uncomfortable narrative. He recorded a string of high-profile retirements, most painfully at the 2009 Australian Open, where he withdrew from his quarter-final match against Andy Roddick while defending his title. To the outside world, he was physically brittle and mentally fragile, a player who couldn't handle the grueling demands of five-set tennis against the very best. As broadcaster and former player Pat Cash observed during this period, he's got some allergies, some issues, but a lot of it's just tension. When he gets into a big match, he struggles to breathe. Djokovic was stuck, not just in the rankings, but in a psychological battle against his own body and the perception that he was destined to be the bronze medalist of his generation. Then, at the end of a solid but unspectacular 2010 season, came the catalyst. It wasn't found on the practice courts or in a gym, but in the cauldron of patriotic fervor that was the Davis Cup final in Belgrade. Representing Serbia against France, Djokovic played like a man possessed, winning his 2 singles rubbers in dominant fashion. When his teammate Viktor Troicki won the deciding match, the Belgrade arena erupted. The Serbian team, in a symbolic act of unity and rebirth, collectively shaved their heads on the court. For Djokovic, this was more than a victory. It was an epiphany. The weight of individual expectation was lifted and replaced by the profound joy of collective triumph. It was the best feeling I ever had on a tennis court, Djokovic later recalled. It was a huge confidence booster. The celebration was unbelievable. It gave me a new wind in my sails. He entered 2011 a transformed man. The change wasn't just mental. During that off-season, a nutritionist identified a severe gluten intolerance that had been hampering his breathing and energy levels for years. He radically overhauled his diet, shedding weight and appearing on court leaner, faster, and with a newfound physical resilience. The man who arrived in Melbourne in January 2011 was not the player the world thought they knew. The doubts had been replaced by a steely resolve, the physical fragility replaced by a seemingly inexhaustible well of stamina. The early rounds of the Australian Open served as a terrifying showcase for this new model Djokovic. He moved through the draw like a wraith, suffocating opponents with a level of defensive prowess and relentless baseline consistency that was simply unplayable. He dismantled Marcel Granollers 6-1, 6-3, 6-1. He beat Ivan Dodig in 4 sets, the only set he would drop for the entire tournament, before recalibrating to win with ease. He then faced his friend and Davis Cup hero, Viktor Troicki, and showed no mercy, cruising to a 6-2, 6-1, 6-2 victory. Against the stylish Spaniard Nicolas Almagro, he was just as ruthless, winning 6-3, 6-4, 6-0. He wasn't just winning matches, he was making a statement. This wasn't the player who retired with exhaustion, this was a machine. In the quarterfinals, a serious threat awaited. Tomas Berdych. The tall, powerful Czech had produced a career-best season in 2010, reaching the Wimbledon final by defeating both Federer and Djokovic en route. His flat, thunderous ground strokes could take the racket out of any player's hands. This was a genuine danger match. Djokovic, however, turned it into a masterclass. He absorbed Berdych's power, his improved flexibility and court coverage allowing him to turn brutal defense into devastating offense in the blink of an eye. He won 6-1, 7-6, 6-1, a scoreline that sent shockwaves through the locker room. This was not the Djokovic that Berdych had beaten at Wimbledon. This was something else entirely. And so he arrived at the semi-final, and a familiar foe, Roger Federer. The context of this match was thick with history and tension. Just 4 months earlier, they had played one of the greatest matches of their rivalry in the semi-finals of the US Open. On that day, Federer held 2 match points, only for Djokovic to save them with 2 of the most audacious, go-for-broke forehands of his life, before snatching an improbable victory. Federer was still smarting from that loss. He was the defending champion in Melbourne, the world number 2, and he was determined to reassert his authority. For the first set, the 2 titans traded blows, a spectacular display of attacking tennis that culminated in a tense tiebreak. Just as he had done in their 2008 encounter on this very court, Djokovic held his nerve, his baseline consistency proving the difference. He took the set 7-6. But Federer was not the king of Melbourne Park for nothing. He roared back in the second set, playing with sublime aggression. But it was not enough for Djokovic, who stayed calm and won it 7-5. The crowd in Rod Laver Arena could not believe their eyes. This was the exact point where the Djokovic of old was expected to fade, his energy levels dipping, his belief wavering. That's not what happened, though. Djokovic came out for the third set with a renewed intensity that stunned Federer. His returning and depth of shot simply overwhelming. The new, gluten-free, Davis Cup-inspired Djokovic was physically and mentally unbreakable. The victory was even more comprehensive than his win in 2008. It wasn't a shock this time. It was a confirmation. A new power had truly arrived. He played a great match, a resigned Federer admitted. The return is his strength.
Look, Novak was the better player tonight, and you got to accept that and move on from here. It's not the end in any way, you know. It's.
Djokovic, for his part, knew the significance of the win. It was a great performance, he said. I had to take my chances. In the second set, I was a bit passive, and he took control. But after I lost it, I managed to regather my concentration and play my best tennis.
Last moment, and it's really one of the best matches I've played in a while.
His opponent in the final was Andy Murray. The Scot, born just 1 week after Djokovic, was his oldest rival. They had grown up together, competing in junior tournaments across Europe, their careers running in a constant, fascinating parallel. While Djokovic had his 1 slam, Murray was still searching for his maiden title, carrying the crushing weight of 75 years of British tennis history on his shoulders. He had reached 2 previous major finals, the 2008 US Open and the 2010 Australian Open, both against Federer, and had lost both in straight sets, failing to win a single set. The final was billed as a battle of peers, but it was also a study in contrasting psychological states. What transpired on court was not a contest, but a clinical, almost cruel execution. Djokovic, having conquered his own demons, played with the freedom of a man who had finally unlocked his full potential. Murray, haunted by his past failures, played like a man shackled by pressure. The long, brutal baseline rallies, the kind Murray usually thrived on, were dominated by Djokovic. His relentless depth and accuracy pinned Murray behind the baseline, forcing error after error from the increasingly frustrated Scot. Djokovic won the first set 6-4. He then blitzed through the second 6-2. The match was only an hour and a half old, but the result already felt like a foregone conclusion. Murray had no answers. Every tactic he tried was neutralized. Every long rally felt like a slow march towards defeat. Djokovic was like the Great Wall, returning everything with interest. He closed out the match 6-3 in the third set. For Djokovic, This was a moment of supreme validation. The 3-year wait was over. He was no longer a one-slam wonder. He was a 2-time Australian Open champion.
That's one of the most dominant performances throughout the 2 weeks that I remember. So, I mean, what do you think of the 2 weeks?
I think it's been the best tournament in the last 2-3 years for me. You know, maybe since the 2008 championship that I won here, my first Grand Slam in Australia as well. So this is proving again to me and to everybody that these conditions here, this center court, this tournament is really suitable to my game, and I really enjoy playing. I enjoy the support. I enjoy these 2 weeks as long as it's not really hot.
Right.
I can perform my best tennis.
This victory was far more than just a second Grand Slam title. It was the first act of what would become one of the most dominant periods in the history of sport. It was the start of a 41-match winning streak to begin the 2011 season, a year in which he would win 3 of the 4 majors and ascend to world number 1. The journey from the frustrated, physically fragile contender of 2010 to the invincible champion of 2011 was complete. The rebirth that began with a patriotic haircut in Belgrade was consecrated on the blue courts of Melbourne, and the world of tennis would never be the same. But more about it in the next episode. Thanks so much for watching. Your support means the world to me. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts about the 2011 Australian Open.